start, so you have a range clear launch.
3, 2, 1.
To Moon Trees Live 3, a distance learning adventure brought to you by the USDA Forest Service and the Natural Enquirer with help from our good friends at NASA. Now, I'm grateful to be your host for today. My name is M. Chot Edwards. I work in partnerships and education here at the Forest Service, which manages about 193 million acres of national forest and grasslands throughout the United States. That's not all, though. We also work in partnership with tribal and state governments, as well as private landowners to benefit an additional 600 million acres, not to mention all of the work we do with forests internationally. Whew, right. Meanwhile, the Natural Enquirer is a program that takes scientific research papers and rewrites them in easy to understand language for students at many different grade levels. And all of their materials are completely free to order or download from the website. In fact, they just released their latest publication called Grow Where You're Planted, which talks about, you guessed it, the Moon Trees Project. And that's really great because that's what we're talking about today, right? We are so glad that you could join us today and learn about the journey that our little seed friends are taking. If you haven't heard about moon trees before, it's a really exciting science project. The Forest Service provided hundreds of seeds from 5 different species to NASA. And then NASA launched those seeds into space for about 26 days as a part of the Artemis 1 mission. The Forest Service put these seeds into special packaging for their space flight. And once the spacecraft came back to Earth, the Forest Service tested the seeds to see how that space travel might have impacted them. This included planting the seeds in Forest Service nurseries and watching how they grow. Only seeds went to space, not actual trees. So when you hear us say moon trees, I want you to picture the seeds. And no seeds were actually planted on the moon. We call them moon trees because these trees came from seeds that have orbited or gone around the moon. Whew. Once our moon tree seedlings turn into little seedlings, they get to grow in a nursery, right? And once those are large enough, they're actually going to get planted around the country. And soon you might be able to get your own moon tree. Isn't that amazing? Now, if you want to learn more about the mission and the kinds of trees that we sent into space, we'll talk about those things. We did talk about some of those and cover some today too, but we did this in our previous program called Moon Trees Live 1. And if you're interested in learning about how we tested the seeds and how we raised them, we talked about those things in Moon Trees Live 2. So when you're done with this program, you might as well go back and check those out too, right? Hint, 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 hint. Go back and check those out. Hint, hint. Okay. All right. But wait, there's more. We also have some previous episodes of Moon Trees Live 3 online right now. So there are 3 in total. Episode 1 is about growing tree seedlings. Episode 2 is about measuring tree seedlings. And then episode 3 is about our future plans. So then what exactly does that leave for us to talk about today? Well, today is all about you. We've done enough talking, so we want to hear from you. Feel free to share any questions you have about moon trees with us. Just comment on this video while we're live on the Natural Enquirer YouTube channel, and we'll have some knowledgeable experts standing by who will be happy to answer you. Okay? Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Nichols Middle School in Joshua, Texas for joining. Whew, yes. Anybody else out there, go ahead and send us a little note and we'll hopefully get your name in as well. Thank you so much for joining. Now, about those experts who will be answering the questions, we have people including Rachel Bayer with the USDA Forest Service, as well as Brady McDonald, Nissa McKinney, and Jessica Nicholson with the Natural Enquirer. Yes, what a great team. I love working with them. Now, if you see a response from the Natural Enquirer, those answers are coming from our official experts. Now, our online experts aren't the only folks helping us today. I'm also very excited to have several scientists from the USDA Forest Service with us live here to talk about moon trees. So let me introduce Cass Dumrose, Jeremy Pinto, and Emily Rhodes. Let's start with you, Cass. It's been great having you on so many of these episodes. Would you like to say hi?
Hey, I'm Kat. Happy to be here today and looking forward to some great questions. Hey, everyone. I'm Cass Dumrose, and I'm a senior research scientist with the Forest Service.
Right on. Now, everybody at home, I want to welcome a new friend, introduce you to a new friend. Jeremy, would you like to come on and say hey? Tell people who you are.
Hi, I'm Chad. Thank you for that introduction. My name's Jeremy Pinto. I'm a research plant physiologist with the Forest Service in the Rocky Mountain Research Station, and I'm sitting right here in Moscow, Idaho today. Thanks for the introduction.
Right on. Thank you. And now, last but certainly not least, another new friend, Emily. Would you like to come on and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Amchat. Hi, I'm Emily Rhodes, and I am a greenhouse manager at the Coeur d'Alene Nursery, coming to you today from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. Now, that kind of tells you a bit about us, but we want to talk about you. What questions do you at home watching this program have about our moon trees? Remember to type those questions into the comments below. While you're typing them, I'll go ahead and get the ball rolling. So let's start with a question just generally for everyone. Why is your job fun? Just why is your particular job fun?
I'll start. I've been doing this job for 40 years, and I love this job because first, I get to work with some really great people, and two, I get to spend all of my time working with plants and figuring out how they grow and how I can use that information to help restore our ecosystems.
Fun to me.
I guess I'll go next. Thanks. I think this job is fun because first of all, I love plants. I've loved working with plants since I was a kid, in the garden, playing in the garden, growing things and seeing how they develop. And I think it was just natural that I learned how plants grow and apply that in a scientific format. I like discovering new things, and I also like how things change over time. And we always get new projects and are discovering new things about how plants grow and how they survive and how they turn into forests or ecosystems. And it's just wonderful discovery. I love it.
Yeah, must be nice working in the things you enjoy. You got it.
Yeah, so I guess it's my turn. I'm going to echo a lot of what Jeremy said. I grew up with a garden, grew up planting seeds with my dad outside, and I think it just, again, transitioned into, man, I could do something like this for a living. And I love working in a greenhouse. I love working at a nursery. I don't sit at a desk all day. I'm up, I'm moving around, I'm problem solving, I'm fixing equipment. I get to watch how all these different seed sources grow. I get to cater how I take care of plants based on where things are from. And I get to support the National Forest System and grow just an enormous variety of plants, anything that we need for our national forests. It's really fun.
I hear you saying fun a lot. That must be great to work in a place that you feel is fun. Oh, I feel the same way. But while we have you on screen, Emily, can I ask a question that has come in? It's why are most of the Forest Service nurseries located in the West?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of public land is in the West. And so you want nurseries to be close to the place that they're delivering plant material, it is less stressful for the plants to move them small distances when we have to get them from the nurseries to the outplanting sites. So it's a logistical thing. And then also our climates are best suited to grow the species that we're going to put them right back where they're headed. So I get winters and summers, and I'm growing plant material that is adapted for the area that I'm then sending the material back to.
Okay, Emily, people are really excited. We have a fourth grader, Skyly, who wants to know, why do trees grow in a nursery like they're babies? Because
Ah.
not all plants grow like that.
Right. So plants can grow, seeds can drop onto the forest floor and they can grow outside, but they're not well taken care of. We can't make every single seed grow into a plant. In a nursery, just like with babies, right, we have the ability to fully take care of them, give them all the water and nutrients and food that they need so that they can grow and become seedlings, and then we can put them back out on the National Forest System or wherever they're headed.
Great. Thank you so much for explaining that. Can this next piece, still from Skyly, our fourth grader, but Cass or Jeremy, you might want to answer this one. Are moon trees stronger than other trees?
You want to take it, Jeremy?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take a stab. That's an interesting question. Are they stronger? Like those trees, are they, are they stronger? What do we mean by stronger? I suppose like we can talk about them in terms of how they're growing, and are they growing better, or are they germinating better? Well, related to what I was measuring previously, or what was covered previous in the episodes, I was measuring amount of photosynthesis that these trees were doing relative to one another, right? So in my sense, I'm thinking, is one tree photosynthesizing more than the other based on its journey around the moon? And I think preliminary analysis has showed that trip around the moon didn't really show that one was stronger than the other. So they're actually performing very similarly at this point in time. So, Cass, you want to follow up with that?
Yeah, and on that same vein, we've been measuring these trees that have germinated and are growing in our greenhouse, and we really don't see any differences in their size. So our moon trees and our control trees, grown from seeds that didn't go around the moon, the plants are about the same size. When we get to germination, our data is a little messier, which is another thing that makes our job fun, right? We always like it when our data doesn't sort of occur the way we thought it was going to be. It makes us think more. And there, for germination, it's a little mixed. Some species did a little bit better when they went around the moon. What? And then some did a little bit poorer when they were exposed to space travel. So we're still teasing that out. But I think I'd agree with Jeremy. I don't think our moon trees are any stronger, but we sure are happy that they're doing well here back on Earth.
Fantastic. I'm going to come back to you and ask you a bit about some of the science and hypothesis that we might have had. So that's a quick pause, putting a pin in that. But I want to give a quick shout out to Mr. Hush's class at Benton Middle School in Prince William County, Virginia. And also to Boardman Glenwood Junior High in Youngstown, Ohio. Right on. Thank you all so much for joining. One of the follow-up questions is actually coming from our friends at Benton Middle School in Virginia. They had lots of questions, but one that fits right now is, are there any other variables that could have affected the seeds besides their time spending without gravity? What would you think?
Yes, there's a lot of variables. And the more that we look into this, the more variables that we're sort of discovering that we need to be considering for future work with this. Yeah, one of the things that we try to do as scientists is we try to separate our treatment, which in this case was a flight around the moon, with other noisy things that could be influencing the results that we see. And so for this experiment that we're doing right now, one of the things that we didn't anticipate having to consider, but became apparent, was just how much time did the seeds have to spend in the Orion capsule before they actually went into space. And so we had some seeds that spent more than a year outside of what we would call ideal storage conditions. And then we had some seeds that had a very short time out, and then some seeds that were kept in perfect conditions for the entire experience. So those things came into play, and we really weren't expecting that long time duration in the Artemis 1 um, as part of the Artemis 1 mission. So that's variability that creeps in and it influences the results that we see. And it's something that we have to consider when we start thinking about um, is it really the space flight itself, or is it all of the time that goes and transpires before the seeds actually got into space? And in the future, if we do this experiment again, we'll try and figure out how we can minimize that time before they actually go into space so that we can get a clearer picture of what's actually happening to them while they're in space and not noisy conditions about what's happening to them before they actually get into space.
Wow, you kind of answered. Thanks so much, Cass. You kind of answered this other one. A question that came in is, what are some of the things you would um, that you would keep if you were to redo this experiment? So you talk about some of the things you change. What are some of the things you'd keep?
One of the things we keep the same species, right? And ideally, if we have enough seed, we would even use the same seed sources that we used this first time. So then we could compare the species and seed sources over time to make sure that we get the same result that we got the first time, reinforce our results. That would be something we'd do the same. I'd love to, in the second round, if we get another chance, to try it with a few more species. And as we just talked about a minute ago, try and reduce some of that other variability so that we get a clearer picture of what's actually the effect of space rather than what's the effect of just the whole process of getting seeds into space.
Thank you, Cass. I think anyone can take this next question. This one comes from our friends, the students at Wakefield Marinisco School in Michigan. Thanks for the questions, y'all. And they want to know, why do you need good soil for a tree to grow?
You want me to jump in?
Yes.
Cool.
Sure. Okay. I'll take a stab and you guys can help me out. So you need good soil for trees to grow, because soil has the ability to hold nutrients and has the ability to hold water. And so if you have soils that are not ideal, the plant cannot get water and it can't get nutrients, and in some cases can't get oxygen if there's too much clay. So the type of soil really helps make better trees. It makes our job easier on the growing end. You don't have to put as many inputs in, so add things artificially if your soils are good from the beginning.
Okay.
I would add to that, trees are really marvelous adapted things. And so we have trees that grow on some really poor soils too. They're adapted to that. So yeah, trees will grow really well on good soil, but they're adapted, and some species prefer to grow on really poor sites. So when we start thinking about trees, we have to think broadly. We kind of like to joke that, with trees, there's lots of shades of green of where they'll grow and where they won't grow. And it depends on the species.
Yeah, I think just to bounce in on some of those answers as well. I think trees are amazing because they are truly connected to the environment in which they live, not only below ground but also above ground, right? So above ground, like some of the stuff that I was measuring, is they capture carbon dioxide, right, and photosynthesize that and turn that into food. They turn that into their own food so that they can grow. But down below where the roots are, where the soil is, that's also another critical connection, because in order to capture that carbon and open their stomata, they need water and they need nutrients to be able to synthesize all these things into that food, right? So where the roots are, just as Emily said, it's really important that they have access. Like, connection to the ground so that they can get all the necessary things they need to build them who they are. And yeah, like Cass mentioned, they're really amazing, right? They can grow in super lush soils, or as I've been in the woods, I can see trees that are growing out of rocks. And I can imagine, your roots probably not even in soil, but those roots are going through the cracks and they're somehow finding things. And maybe the trees aren't gigantic, but they're still connected below ground, still doing their thing.
And we have certainly seen trees growing in some very interesting and sometimes precarious places. Yes. So we had a few people who asked this question, and it really fits here. They want to know if moon trees can survive anywhere, like tropical areas, cold areas, the North Pole, the South Pole, or all of them.
Well, I'll take a first swing at this. So the quick answer is no. And as we've kind of alluded to in that last question, different species grow in different areas for reasons, right? They're either adapted to the climate, or they're adapted to the soil, or they're adapted to the climate and the soil. And so the trees that we grew in this experiment for this moon trees are all adapted to climatic conditions that we find basically in the lower 48 United States, right? So not really excessively cold like you'd have at the North Pole or the South Pole, and not really hot and humid like you'd see in the tropics, but more of this temperate zone that most of the United States is in. And that's where our trees are mostly adapted to. But even within that, we have some of our species like our Douglas fir, which only occurs in the Western United States. And then we have things like sweet gum and sycamore that only grow in the eastern part of the United States. And one of the reasons that we have all of these different species involved is so that we could get species that would be adapted to specific parts of the United States. And so when we ship them out to schools, like maybe some of the schools that we're talking to today, we're assured that those trees will grow well.
Great. On a different note, we have a question asking about the way we measure trees. Why do you measure trees by your chest height? Why can't you measure it by some other height?
This is a good question. I'll take a stab at it because I actually I thought it was a good one for me because I typically don't measure the trees that I work with at chest height because they're only this big. Unless I put them up at this level, then I can measure them right here at my chest. But no, really, the trees I measure are really small. And so we typically measure the seedlings like these moon trees, maybe 1 centimeter above the ground line. But I did look this up, this chest height measurement, diameter at breast height. It's a forestry measurement. And I thought, well, this comes within forest, the forest history and whatnot. And first, logically, I started to think about it before I dove in. I thought, well, trees can be in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And, as a tree comes out of the ground, it can be kind of bulbous in shape before it finally reaches its nice tapered form. And so we kind of get around that by saying at this standard height, which would be breast height, we can take a measure and kind of get away from some of those deformities and be more standardized. And then if we define that, scientists and other people around can use that as a metric, and we can all have very similar measurements, right? So it's kind of like making a standard and going from there. Interestingly enough, our diameter of breast height measurement is 4 foot 6 inches off the ground. And I kind of wanted to know where that came from. So I looked it up, and it was actually defined by the first chief of our Forest Service, Gifford Pinchot. And so historically, he was the first one that said, this is the measurement that we're going to do. And I think that's kind of cool. But also, interestingly enough, he was also a fairly big guy. And so 4 foot 6 inches was pretty easy for him to probably make that measurement, and very convenient. And also thinking about, too, when foresters go into the forest and they're taking lots of measurements, if you're measuring at the base of your tree, you're probably going to have a sore back at the end of the day. So conveniently, we have Gifford Pinchot, who has a comfortable arm width at 4 foot 6 inches and can measure these trees. But the standard across the world does vary a little bit. Here in the US, we use the 4 foot 6 inches. I think internationally, it's 1.3 meters, which is 4 foot 3 inches. But the standard is to try and get kind of above or below those deformities, and then have uniform calculations of um, tree volume, basal area in the forest, and all these types of things. So that's my little quick quip on how I learned about DBH. But typically, I don't measure DBH because our seedlings aren't that tall. Anybody else?
Well, I just thought it was because foresters love trees, and so every time they need to measure one, they just needed to come up and hug it.
Indeed, I failed to mention that. Great.
Oh boy, yes. Hug a tree once a day by measuring it. Okay, so this comes from some students who were watching one of our earlier broadcasts, and they want to know, how does the machine know how much carbon a tree is releasing? Can somebody help us with that?
That's a very good question. I think, I'm glad you watched the episode that I got to talk about the fancy machine that I get to use to measure carbon dioxide being taken in by trees. It's a pretty complicated machine. It's amazing, and it measures, but it only measures a few things, right? It measures carbon dioxide, it measures water, and it measures temperature. And it takes into account all these inputs as well, like the light levels in the chambers. But to measure carbon, what this machine does is it has an infrared uh, gas analyzer. It's called an infrared gas analyzer, meaning it has a diffuse infrared emitter that passes through a stream of air and has a sensor on the other side that detects how much carbon dioxide is passing between where the infrared light source is being emitted and where that sensor is detecting how much infrared wavelength is passing through. So the more carbon dioxide that's passing through that stream, the detector will make that distinction. So for a plant, the stream of carbon dioxide coming through the machine is known. It's a parameter that I can put in at, like, let's say, a measurement of 400 parts per million. So it enters through that analyzer that affirms, yes, it's 400 parts per million, goes into the chamber where the plant is doing its thing, right? Its stomata are open, it's diffusing water, it's taking in that carbon dioxide, and it's changing the amount of carbon dioxide within that chamber. So then there's another downstream sensor that then takes that measurement. It says, oh, we know 400 parts per million are coming in. And a downstream, it says, oh, well, we're only getting 395 parts per million coming out. So it knows that some carbon dioxide has been extracted by the plants. And so that carbon dioxide has been entering in through the stomata of the plant. And so that's kind of a basic idea. There's a whole lot of other calculations going on in the background, but it's basically measuring the difference of a standard and what's being seen on the back end.
Wow, so you use mathematics in a pretty interesting way. I'm sorry, Cass, did you want to say something?
No, it's just like I know what he does, but I'm glad that he finally explained it to me so I can understand it.
That's awesome. Oh, okay, one just came in. So for all of our scientists here, where do the moon tree's parents live before the seeds went into space? And this one comes from Nichols Middle School.
Wow. I'm thinking about that. That's a really cool question. You know, the seeds that we sent into space, most of them were collected what we call operationally. So some foresters went out into the woods and looked for trees that had seeds on them or cones on them, collected those, and those became what we call a seed source or a seed collection. So from a distinct area, they probably collected seeds off of many trees because that's one of the things that we do to ensure that we keep a high level of diversity in our crops, genetic diversity. So we probably can't tell what tree specifically parented the seed that went into space, but we know the general area and the collection of trees that contributed towards that. So there's probably not one single parent that's responsible for, say, all of our loblolly pine, but you might think of it as a family of trees in an area um, down in, I think those came from Mississippi. Um, a collection, a family of trees that contributed seeds that became part of the seed source that we sent into space. Hopefully that's made some sense.
It did. It did. Or I
Thanks.
pictured it. We have so many questions coming in. My goodness. I just want to take one quick moment to give a shout out to Kathy Michaela's fourth grade class at Wakefield Marinisco School in Michigan. Also to Sherwood Elementary School in Maryland. And then one more real quick, Crescent Elementary School in Wisconsin. Yes. Uh, Funny though, this question comes again from our friends in Benton Middle School. So you all already talked about why your job is fun, but why did you want your job? Or the other part of it is your job ever boring?
Want me to go first? Are we just going to go in the same order here, kids? We can do that. So,
Yeah, that'd be good.
why did I want my job? I'm not sure that I knew that I wanted this job, but it sort of developed over time. And I think everyone else who's sitting here today will probably have the same experience. You have a general idea. I knew I wanted to be a forester and I wanted to do forestry. And when I graduated from high school, I went to a forestry school and learned about forestry. And just coincidentally, one of the projects that I had to do for one of my classes, I had to do it in the greenhouse. And I got introduced to the greenhouse. And I thought, well, this is really fun and interesting. And then I had an opportunity to go to graduate school and work at a nursery and do my research there. And that got me even more excited about that. And I think it's there's some things in my background similar to Emily. I had my grandmother who was an avid gardener and got me out and playing in the dirt and growing things. And so all of those things sort of came together and really sparked that interest to do more, do something, have a career where I'm growing plants in a greenhouse and having an impact. And that turned into my graduate degrees, and then that turned into this job with the Forest Service. And somehow maybe the vocation, this thing about growing plants, chose me rather than the other way around. And does it ever get boring? Oh my gosh, no. It's like Jeremy said, every day it's something new, something else to think about, to ponder, to do science, to discover more, to work with colleagues who are also very interested in how forest ecosystems work. So it's never, ever boring.
I think I'll go next. I'll just jump in next if you don't mind. So um, I feel like Cass is, I didn't know that I couldn't, when I was younger, I couldn't tell you that I was going to be a research plant physiologist for the Forest Service. I mean, that'd be really tough, but just kind of like we've talked about previously and similar to everybody else. I remember being in the woods one time with my dad as a kid, because I love being in the woods, and we were just cruising around and I think he was a high school biology teacher, but he's pointing different things out and stuff like that, and knew I enjoyed being out there. And we actually saw some Forest Service people out there doing some work. And he was like, you can get a job being in the woods doing that type of thing. And that really stuck with me. I thought, oh, wow, like that would be super amazing. And so I think just kind of serendipitously, I kept that in the back of my mind and went to school and kind of took some of the right classes and met some of the right people and had some great opportunities to explore that. And I've tried lots of different Forest Service jobs along the way. And yeah, each one of them I've done. I've never been bored. It's always been a good time, from doing work in the woods with chainsaws to wildland firefighting to doing inventories on owls. I mean, any of those things can sound pretty exciting, right? So landing here was kind of serendipitous, I think, because again, I love working with plants and I love the people who work with plants as well. And so you kind of follow the path that life gives you and the opportunities. And lo and behold, I ended up being a scientist that gets to work with seedlings and discover how they grow and how to treat them optimally and make them survive and turn into future forests or future ecosystems. I think I couldn't have told you I wanted to do that, but I tell you, it's pretty amazing to do it right now. And it is not that boring, I tell you. So that's it.
Wonderful. Yeah. So my path is similar to a lot of the things that were just mentioned. I should say, my dad was a nursery specialist with the Forest Service. So I am a second generation Forest Service employee. So I had exposure to nurseries as a kid. Um, I remember sometimes family vacations would end up kind of tied next to nursery conferences. And so I grew up in the Midwest originally, and every time I would be out anywhere with my dad, he would identify every single tree species everywhere I went. And so I think I just kind of started learning, knowing what trees were. I've always found it really fascinating. I never thought I would do what my dad did, but he always seemed to really love his job. And so just having that at home, and then I had lots of wonderful educators along the way who really encouraged a love of science and biology, and I was very fortunate to have really good teachers. And so I worked in a lab as a high school student washing dishes, and then I just started kind of working in greenhouses, growing plants. That was always the thing I really loved. I did a lot of genetics work in agricultural crops, and then decided that that maybe wasn't the path I wanted to go down. I like the genetic diversity of natural plants, of native plants compared to agricultural crops, which they kind of breed a lot of that diversity out. And so it led to, I did an undergraduate degree at Purdue and then a master's degree at University of Idaho, where I got to work in a native plant nursery. And then an opportunity came for me to work with the Forest Service and just kind of continue. And it is challenging and fun. And I have learned more about small motors and greenhouse equipment than I ever thought I would. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I basically am farming now. And so you get all of the seasonal variation that comes with the job. So just as soon as something starts to get boring and repetitive, the seasons change and I get to move into something else. So that really helps. That seasonal nature really helps kind of make the years go by quickly. So I've been doing it for about 10 years and never grown a perfect crop of trees. So it's always the goal, but haven't done it yet. So I'll keep growing them. And I guess I will say some of the boring parts of my job are like budget, those kinds of things, the money, you know, but the actual work of being out in the greenhouses and growing things is never boring and is always challenging and really fun.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for explaining the different sides of all you do. And as you've been talking, kids are interested and want to follow up a little bit. Emily, what's your favorite tree to grow? And then also, do we grow grasses and flowers in the nurseries?
Yeah, so my favorite trees to grow are Western larch because it is a deciduous conifer, which makes it a little unusual. So right now, all along hillsides in Idaho and Montana, they are turning yellow and losing their needles, but they are a conifer, so they should be evergreen. So they're kind of one of these in between tree species. And then we also grow a lot of white bark pine at our facility, about 300,000 annually. And white bark pine is a tree species that is not for timber, but mostly for habitat. It's food for grizzly bears and Clark's nutcracker. And it grows high up on tops of mountains in some of those places where you don't think trees should grow, and in some of the prettiest places, I would say. And it's a challenging species to grow because it is adapted to this really high and dry elevation. And so we've done a lot of experimenting and work on propagating it. So those two tree species are my favorites. And then because our goal is to support the National Forest System, we grow anything the National Forest System needs. So botanists call us up and they ask for grasses and wildflowers and sedges and rushes. And I think this year we propagated about 90 species of shrubs, grasses, and wildflowers. So, and every single one of those has a different requirement to get those seeds to sprout and germinate and grow. And so that's some of the really, really fun work that we do. And we have to kind of troubleshoot all along the way to get the seeds to germinate. So yes, we grow anything that the National Forest System needs.
Wow, amazing. The diversity of what we do is amazing. 90 different species, great. Let's see, a follow-up question folks had. If a tree is planted outside of its growing zone, would that affect how tall the tree would grow?
Yes, it could. And a lot of our trees that are native to specific areas in the United States, we grow them in other parts of the United States as ornamentals, like just for street trees or in parks. And arboretums are really good examples of this, where they take trees from everywhere, even around the world, and grow them in a central place so that you can go in and see what trees from other areas look like. And depending on just about everything, the trees might be taller when they're moved like that, or they might be shorter when they're moved like that. And so it just depends on a bunch of different factors, but it would influence their growth.
Wow, I'm really learning a lot today, from where a tree is planted could impact how it grows. I also learned about larches, whereas I thought the eastern tamarack was the only deciduous conifer. So lots going on. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You get a thanks, and you get a thanks. And especially a thank you to everybody at home. And I think we are kind of getting to our limit because the questions are slowing down, and you've answered so many. But sadly, that means we're going to start to wrap up for today. And we never really want to go, but don't worry. If we missed your question, or if you think of one later, you can always send those questions to this email address. You ready? fsconservationeducation@gmail.com. That's FS like Forest Service, conservationeducation@gmail.com. You can feel free to let us know what you thought of this program there too. All right, so stay in touch. Now, also, we're going to continue to track the growth of our tree seeds. So, to get the latest information and to get the latest Moon Trees Live educational materials, be sure to keep checking out the National Enquirer website and the Forest Service website about Moon Trees Live. Just follow the links that appear on the screen. Now, I really want to thank all of our friends who helped us today from the USDA Forest Service and the National Enquirer. So everybody at home and at school, let's say farewell to our wonderful panelists today. Cass, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Sure. I'd just like to say thanks for watching again. We sure have fun doing these and hope to see you again, maybe somewhere else. Maybe there's another moon trees coming down the pipe, or we can talk about how the moon trees are doing once they get shipped from the nurseries and are growing at places all around the U.S.
Nice. How about you, Jeremy? Any final thought?
Of course, thanks. It's been a pleasure to be here. It's been an honor to be here. And I just wanted to say I had a great time. Those were really great questions. And I myself learned a lot from some of my colleagues and friends here. So thank you for that. For those of you out there just watching, maybe you might consider becoming a Forest Service scientist someday. I mean, I didn't know what a research plant physiologist was back then, but now you do. And it's never boring, except for maybe budget or something like that. But it is a good time. And yeah, so thanks. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you for encouraging all those young scientists at home to remember that they can work in the outdoors. Thank you. How about you, Emily? Any final thoughts for our folks out there in TV land?
Oh, no, I just thank you so much. And yes, thank you for having me. Thank you for all the wonderful questions and for being an engaged audience. And really do consider a job with the Forest Service or with some other agency that gets you outside. It is a wonderful thing. And I feel like the work that we do really makes a difference and an impact on the environment, and in a lot of your local communities. So if nothing else, get out on your national forests and do some recreation, take a hike. It's a beautiful time of year.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much to you scientists for participating. And of course, another big thanks to everybody out there for watching. Remember to check out Moon Trees Live 1 and 2, as well as the other 3 videos in the Moon Tree Live 3 series, which are episodes 1, 2, and 3. So many fingers, right? So much going on. Now, if you're interested in other programs like this one, check them all out at fsnaturelive.org. We have programs on climate change, freshwater, grasslands, pollinators, and so much more. In fact, we have another program coming up in 2024 called Nature Health Benefits Live, where we'll talk about the impacts nature has on our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. So be sure to check that one out too. Those videos, and really all of our videos, will be available on the Natural Enquirer YouTube channel. Lastly, I want to give a special thanks to you all out there for allowing me to host these programs over the last several years. Together, we've done Smoky Bear Live, Woodsy Owl Live, Grasslands Live, Freshwaters Live, Great Outdoors Live, and Caves Live. I've been so grateful for this opportunity, and so it's a little bit bittersweet that I say that Moon Trees Live 3 will be the last program I'm hosting. It's been so much fun and it's just an absolute pleasure. So again, I just want to give my big heartfelt thank you to you all. But don't worry, I'm not leaving the Forest Service. I still love everything that we get to do and all the ways we serve the public. I'm just stepping aside to make room for the next generation of talented science communicators and educators. So I'll still be involved. And you may even see me on camera again from time to time because you can't get rid of me that easily. Tenacious like a tree. All right. So really looking forward to that. And to everybody at home watching, please remember to keep an eye out for updates on our tree seedlings. And stay tuned for more out of this world adventures. We'll see you soon.
Three, two, one.